Hi, I'm Dr. Bruce Chalmer. A viewer in London, a woman whom I'll call Marty, writes, Dear Dr. Chalmer, I've just watched your videos about sex, good sex, and sacred sex. I really learned so much from these two videos, and it was very informative as well as interesting and provocative. It made me ask myself questions such as, how do I go from sex to good sex as well as sacred sex when I've never had a boyfriend or been a participant in a loving relationship? I also watched your video on why get married, and that was extremely interesting and also made me ask myself questions, as I have never had a boyfriend and I wonder whether I could ever have or find a loving relationship or even a husband. She then goes on to give some biographical details I'll omit and continues. As you can imagine, I come from an abusive family and I've experienced sexual abuse as well as violence and emotional trauma. The good news is that I've been doing counseling for over 10 years and still see a therapist once a week, which is really awesome. So, Dr. Chalmer, I would like you to please do a video about how do you find a loving relationship or whether it finds you. I've been working on myself for many years, not just through therapy, but also educating myself, incorporating meditation, Pilates, and yoga into my life. I enjoy being on my own and I love my own company. I'm a spiritual person and I'm building on my self-esteem and personal development. My problem is that I would like to have an intimate sexual relationship with a man, but that just has not come my way. I wonder whether this is because the universe is not ready yet to match me up with the right man, or perhaps I'm not ready. I would like your take. I hope that perhaps you could make a video about how to find a loving relationship which incorporates good and healthy reasons to enter into one. Thank you, Marty, for your questions and for your permission for me to quote you in this video. Marty, I imagine you've already heard zillions of ideas about how to find potential partners with all sorts of how-to rules about how to conduct yourself when you do meet someone. I Googled how to find a partner and came up with over 63 million results. I can't imagine I'll come up with much new on that subject. So rather than focusing on the how-to aspect of finding a loving partner, I want to take up your question about what might be some good and healthy reasons to look for a loving relationship. Or to put it another way, what should you be looking for in a relationship that will help it be good and healthy? When you address that, you'll find that you're much better equipped to find the how-to approach that works for you. So, what should you be looking for in a relationship? Marty, since you've seen some of my other videos, you won't be surprised by my answer. For those of you watching, you can find my videos on my website, brucechalmer.com, as well as YouTube and Facebook. As I discussed in my video on the 2 golden gifts you need for your relationship, we need 2 sets of skills for relationships to both survive and thrive: stability skills and intimacy skills. The question about what to look for in a partner is related to those same skills. Basically, you want to find a partner with whom you can have both stability and intimacy. Let me say that again with a slightly different emphasis. You want to find a partner with whom you can have both stability and intimacy. In other words, it starts with you. You need to develop the capacity for both stability and intimacy yourself, and then you can determine whether someone you've met might be able to do that with you. What are the stability skills? They're the skills you need to be able to smooth out the bumps in life as well as you can and deal with the bumps you can't avoid without freaking out. Stability skills cover things like being able to earn a living and manage a household, keep reasonably organized, and fulfill the commitments you make to other people as well as you can. In a relationship, your stability skills are what you use to soothe your partner and soothe yourself when your partner is unavailable or disagrees with you. Of course, a major stability skill in a relationship is the self-control you need to remain sexually and emotionally faithful to your partner and to keep your behavior under control when you get angry. To boil it down, stability skills are what help you reduce anxiety both for yourself and for your partner. What about intimacy skills? Well, you know how stability skills are about reducing anxiety? Intimacy skills are about tolerating and even increasing anxiety, because intimacy with someone who's important to you can be terrifying. Of course, I'm not just talking about sexual or physical intimacy, but emotional honesty. Sometimes it's lovely, ecstatic even. But sometimes being honest with yourself and your partner means bringing up difficult topics, and that means tolerating anxiety. You don't know how your partner will respond. Intimacy is scary. And so a lot of people shut down parts of themselves rather than risk the anxiety of intimacy. But if stability provides the firmly planted roots for a relationship, intimacy provides the energy for growth. And without growth, even the most stable relationship will wither and die. So for a relationship to survive and thrive, you need both stability skills and intimacy skills. First, you need to work on those yourself. And Marty, from your letter, it sounds like you've been doing exactly that. As you know all too well, a history of abuse can make it hard to calm yourself, a stability skill, as well as hard to tolerate the anxiety of conflict in a relationship, an intimacy skill. So the work you've been doing in therapy and all the other good things you've been doing for yourself are just what you need to build those skills. What about when you first meet someone else? How can you tell if a partner has the stability and intimacy skills you need for a relationship to work? Well, at first, you don't. You have to get to know someone, and that takes time. So how can you decide if the person you're with might be the right one? Well, of course, in the very early stages of a relationship, you're not sure. And if you think about it, that puts you in a strikingly similar situation to anyone who's in a relationship, long or short, that they're having doubts about. In other words, you could say that as you're getting to know someone, you're deciding on a date-by-date basis whether or not to call it quits on the budding relationship. When you look at it that way, you can apply the same guidelines I talked about in my video on how to know when to call it quits in a relationship. Because it turns out that those guidelines will help you benefit from the experience of getting to know someone, whether it turns into a happily ever after or not. For starters, look for deal breakers. Anything that means you'd have to abandon your basic values, personal integrity, or essential desires to stay in the relationship is a deal breaker. For example, if you're sure you want children and the person you've met is sure they don't want children, there's no compromise available. It's a deal breaker. If your potential partner doesn't seem to respect women in general or you in particular, it's a deal breaker. If your potential partner's vision of what life together looks like is radically different from yours, and you conclude there's little likelihood of either of you changing what you want, it's a deal breaker. Deal breakers mean you'll never have a stable relationship, no matter how intimate you feel in the moment. Don't waste your time. But often, the differences between you might not be deal breakers at all. They might just be growing pains, the discomfort of being challenged by differences. How do you decide if the differences you encounter are just what you need to push you to grow or are too great to make a go of it? There's no simple formula. But as I said in my video about how to know when to call it quits, here are 3 guidelines that can help. First, don't break up too soon. When you're just getting to meet someone, of course you'll move on if you see deal breakers. But if there aren't clear deal breakers, give it a chance, even if you're not immediately feeling all fluttery. You can be pleasantly surprised by how feelings can grow as you get to know someone. For a new relationship, there's a related guideline. Don't have sex too soon. When you become sexual with someone, you're involving parts of yourself, literally and figuratively, that can overwhelm your judgment. In particular, having sex too soon can blind you to deal breakers, because you can easily confuse that oxytocin-induced feeling of closeness with trust. Research shows that women are especially susceptible to this, which is how otherwise sensible women end up falling for irresponsible bad boys. And even if the differences are just growing pains, if you have sex too soon, you can miss out on what you need to experience to push you to grow. Second, don't be afraid of the differences you encounter. For long-term couples, I express this guideline as get to the right argument, but it's the same idea even if you're just getting to know someone. You need to tolerate the anxiety involved in discovering that someone you hope will be Mr. Right is actually Mr. Different. Doesn't mean he's not also Mr. Right, but you don't know that yet. When you let yourself be aware of the differences you encounter, you can decide whether you want to continue the relationship with your eyes open. You won't stay with someone who's clearly wrong for you, or freak out and end a promising beginning without giving it a chance. Third, get hold of yourself. This is the basis of the other 2. This is how you can handle the inevitable rejections, large and small, that come along with trying to find a relationship. This is how you can stay true to what's important to you, even as you open yourself to growth and change. Getting hold of yourself is just another way of describing the intimacy skill of tolerating anxiety rather than rushing to avoid it or cover it up. And the way you learn to get hold of yourself is by practicing faith. but that's another topic. Marty, thanks again for your letter. I'm Dr. Bruce Chalmer. If you have topics you'd like me to address, drop me a line. I'd love to hear from you.